All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive, and I mean massive, disconnect. The chasm between Russia's grand spring offensive expectations for 2026 and the harsh, chaotic realities actually unfolding in the trenches. The Kremlin put forward a totally non-negotiable demand. Ukraine must completely withdraw from the Donbass. But, as we're about to see, drawing lines on a map in Moscow is entirely different from actually holding them on the ground.
To help us wrap our heads around this complex battlefield, we're going to map out 6 key areas today. First, the grand strategic disconnect. Then, the fortress belt black hole. The absolute chaos of unit shifting, paralyzing the nervous system, manpower and industry bottlenecks, and finally, desperate deterrence. Let's get to it.
Starting right off with Section 1, Grand Strategic Disconnect, the paper calculations versus the trenches.
Now, what is truly fascinating here is how the enormous manpower expectations fundamentally failed to match up with the paper calculations made behind closed doors. We're looking at an army of nearly 600,000 personnel deployed. The expectation? Well, the idea was that this sheer mass would just steamroll through defensive lines. But the reality? It's a completely different story. We are seeing an 80% drop in the rate of advance compared to last year. So instead of sweeping victories, it's just chronic bottlenecks and severe exhaustion across literally every single front.
A major factor stopping this massive force is a specific defensive spine. Let's look at Section 2, the fortress belt black hole, swallowing operational dreams.
So what exactly is this barrier we're talking about? Well, the fortress belt is this highly fortified defensive spine stretching right across Konstantinivka, Drushkivka, Kramatorsk, and Slavyansk. And it hasn't just stopped the Russian attacking force, it's literally turned into a black hole. It is swallowing their operational dreams entirely, basically destroying infiltrating units with highly coordinated artillery fire and completely halting their forward momentum. It's like running into a brick wall.
And the human cost of assaulting this impenetrable line? It's absolutely staggering. Reports indicate that nearly 100,000 Russian soldiers have been lost in just a 6-month window. And what did that astronomical cost actually buy them? A mere 350 kilometers of overall territory.
These numbers brilliantly illustrate the brutal math of modern warfare. Just consider the Donetsk region, specifically the Pokrovsk effort. Capturing a microscopic 53 square kilometers cost over 25,000 soldiers. That is concrete proof of an army consuming itself. The strategic reserves they desperately need for larger offensives, they're simply melting away from negligible gains.
Which brings us to Section 3, the chaos of unit shifting, frantic firefighting on the front. To patch the massive defensive holes created by these losses, Russian command kicked off this unprecedented and, frankly, desperate firefighting effort. They're frantically moving elite forces all across the map. For instance, the 90th Tank Division, a massive armored force of 3,000 soldiers, was hastily redeployed to Alexandrovka. The 76th Airborne and 40th Marine Brigade, they were ripped from their positions and thrown directly into the chaos of Zaporizhia and Huliaipol. The mere fact that they have to shift massive armored forces around like this proves they've lost the ability to cohesively control the front without exposing critical vulnerabilities somewhere else.
And this chaotic rotational spiral? It backfired completely. By pulling units from one sector to plug gaps in another, they stretched their defensive shields way too thin. And Ukraine smartly exploited those exact gaps. They successfully recaptured 244 square kilometers in the Huliaipol and Alexandrivka directions. They actually liberated up to 12 settlements and pushed Russian positions backward, which marks Russia's first clear-net territorial loss since the Kursk operation way back in August 2024. That is huge!
So how did Kyiv actually pull this off against a much larger conventional force? That's Section 4, paralyzing the nervous system, asymmetric and drone warfare tactics.
Well, instead of launching your classic large-scale infantry assaults, Ukraine utilized a highly effective step-by-step asymmetric strategy. First, they conducted deep strikes reaching up to 200 kilometers behind the lines, physically cutting Russia's logistical arteries like a scalpel, targeting ammo depots and transit hubs. Second, they systematically blinded Russian air defenses. And third, once that heavy coordination completely broke down, they sent in small, flexible groups to infiltrate the scattered defensive lines.
This strategy results in total operational paralysis. Ukrainian border guards and specialized units systematically hunted down the exact systems that allow modern armies to function. They eliminated the Stora missile blinding systems, destroyed the Volna communication networks, blew up 6 critical relay antennas, and completely silenced the Costa radars. Without all of this tech, tanks can't connect, artillery is blind, and coordination just collapses. They effectively severed the Russian army's central nervous system.
Up in the skies, it was the exact same story of technological dominance. Ukraine's new generation of interceptors completely shattered the Russian air defense umbrella. The Wild Hornet Sting interceptors destroyed over 120 aerial targets in just one single cycle. And the P-1 Sun interceptor neutralized Russia's newest FPV-equipped Guerrero drones. So, with their radars silenced and their own drones falling right out of the sky, every single Russian target behind the lines was left completely 100% exposed.
Of course, these tactical failures don't happen in a vacuum. Let's look at Section 5, Manpower and Industrial Bottlenecks, the devastating internal toll.
These massive battlefield losses are now triggering deep demographic crises back home. Get this, in just the first quarter of 2026, Russia saw its military recruitment rates plummet by 20% compared to the previous year. The word is officially out that the front line is pretty much a one-way ticket. Even these enormous, unprecedented salary promises they're making, they're just no longer enough to mask the grim reality of the trenches.
And this crisis is heavily bleeding into their manufacturing too. With an estimated 24,000 armored vehicles lost since the war began and zero access to Western chips, Russia is facing severe production bottlenecks. Their grand solution? Pulling antique 1960s-era T-62 tanks straight out of Soviet warehouses. Contrast that with Ukraine, who is leaning heavily into a massive technological edge. They're working closely with Western allies to deploy thousands of brand new, smart drones every single month. It's really night and day. To truly grasp the human toll of this logistical and technological collapse, just look at the northern front in Kharkov. The Russian 122nd Motorized Rifle Regiment was virtually wiped out. They were reduced to fewer than 100 surviving soldiers. And massive failures like this, they have actually sparked a secret, severe purge wave right inside the Russian Ministry of Defense. They aren't just losing frontline troops, they are actively purging their experienced command echelon to shift the blame for these catastrophic failures.
Faced with this massive internal and external collapse, the Kremlin's playable cards are running out fast. Section 6. Desperate deterrence, nuclear rhetoric, and border bluffs.
You know, when a conventional army is stalled out and literally unable to advance, the rhetoric almost always shifts to the unconventional. We're seeing Russia engage in some aggressive muscle flexing using Sarmat, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and Oreshnik systems. But analysts emphasize that this extreme nuclear rhetoric isn't a sign of strength at all. It's actually an external expression of deep helplessness. It's basically a desperate effort to psychologically frighten the Western world into forcing a ceasefire at the negotiating table.
Similarly, the geopolitical bluff of opening a northern front via Belarus is losing all its credibility. For the Belarusian leadership, throwing their army into this conflict carries the risk of absolute political suicide. Plus, Ukraine isn't taking any chances anyway. They maintain highly fortified, incredibly flexible defensive lines right in that exact northern corridor, with 15,000 soldiers on high alert. By using mixed, flexible groups, Ukraine multiplies its counterattack options, rendering this whole border bluff entirely ineffective.
All right, bringing us to our conclusion, the final act.
After breaking down all these stark comparisons and tactical realities, why does this deeply intricate battlefield data actually matter to you? Well, it matters because it cuts right through the political posturing to reveal the true state of the conflict. This quote perfectly summarizes it. The chasm between the grand strategies drawn at the table and the brutal realities in the trenches has never been as deep and unbridgeable. These numbers, the desperate reliance on 1960s hardware, the purging of generals, they objectively demonstrate a bankrupt military apparatus that is now completely trapped inside the enormous security system it originally built.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one pivotal question to think about. Do these desperate shifts we're seeing today actually signal the war's final act? Or can Ukraine's expanding tactical superiority force a radical step before a total collapse? Thank you so much for joining me and diving into the realities behind the headlines today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.